Welcome to the Sheridan Report on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The Sheridan Report, as always, is brought to you by MyBookie.ag. To find out more about MyBookie.ag, go to thegruelingtruth.net, click on the banner at the top of the page, and it will give you up to a 50% cash bonus up to your first deposit of $1,000. You can deposit $2,000, get $1,000 cash back, have $3,000 to play with. I am your co-host for the show, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I'd like to welcome in the other co-host from the Sheridan Report, the man himself, Bobby Sheridan. How you doing, Bobby?
Hey, I'm doing good, Mike, and I'm anxious to talk about these Sweet 16 games, and I'm even more anxious that baseball season is starting, and that's always my bread and butter, and that's kind of what I grew up on, you know, starting to make money at this thing, and it starts for real here Thursday. So
all
we're
right.
Excited about it.
So we got March Madness, we got opening day, so we're going to start off with March Madness. You want to start off talking about all the games? You just want to pick the couple you are interested in betting, or how you want to do it?
I want to just kind of touch on all four of the games tomorrow and give the listeners a look at the line and a look at the total and the game times and that kind of stuff. And then there's two of these four games that I'm going to be betting on, and I'll indicate those. So right there in your bracket, Mike, there in Louisville, we've got the first game starts at 4:30, and it's Purdue against Tennessee. And Tennessee's favored by 1.5, and the over-under is 146.
You can get 2 on MyBookie.
And that wouldn't be a bad bet. I'm not going to be on this game personally. This is a tricky game for me. I will tell the listeners this, that Purdue is a trendy bet this week from some of the professionals. They really think that they've got a real good chance to knock off Tennessee. And, I love that coach, and I like that team. But it's tricky for me because they are really centered on that guard, Edwards. They're really centered on him. If he doesn't do his thing, I don't think they're going to win this game. And I don't trust him. So I know he's a good player and he's a strong guard and he's done a good job for them, but he threw in enough clunkers for me there during their little bad stretch towards the end of the Big Ten, and I think he's a bit overrated. I don't like the fact that their offense is so centered on a couple of the scorers. So I'm going to lay off the game. I do think Purdue's the better team, but I'm going to lay off the game.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the thing that strikes me is this. Tennessee's defense is not very good. Their perimeter defense has been atrocious, and Carson Edwards is a hell of a player if he can get open. Even if he can't, if he's on. I think Matt Harms is the kid that puts Purdue over the top in this game tomorrow. I think he's a force inside, and he's a kid that plays with a lot of emotion. This game's going to be played in Louisville, so it's close enough that both fan bases can be there. I think it's a good matchup. The thing that strikes me about Tennessee is after a tough early season schedule, they went 15, 16 games without really playing that much competition. And if you look at them in the tournament against Colgate and Iowa, which are not very good teams, I don't think, they had big leads. They let those leads get away. And it just seems to me that if you go back to the SEC championship game, Auburn ran them out of the building by like 30 or 40 points. So I think Tennessee's defense is what would scare me here. I love the 2 points, and I can tell you I've already bet that 2 points because once I saw it was up to 2, I think on Sunday it was at Pick'em when it opened up, and now it's already to 2. Yeah. I'm going to take the points, and I'm going to bet on Carson Edwards having a big game. If he doesn't, I'll go down in flames. But that's why it's not a science. And really science
is
you anyway.
Yeah, you have a take, and you go with your take, and that's what sports betting is, and hopefully it's an educated take most of the time, and you have an idea of what the value is, and that's the key to winning at this. And Purdue at +2 is a good bet. I don't think it's a bad bet. I think it's a good bet. It's just one that I'm going to pass on.
I think the game's a toss-up. So if you're going to bet it, I would go with the team with the points to get more value. If I was going to bet it even up, I would go with the more value. I'd go with the +110 instead of -130. Also in that region, tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock West or Pacific time, we've got your team, Bobby, who you've been banking on, and I've been banking on them with you. Oregon going up against Virginia. MyBookie has Virginia an 8-point favorite. Is that enough points? Not enough points, or what do you think?
Well, I think it's enough points. Virginia opened 7.5, and they went up to 8.5. So both of these favorites of these two games, Tennessee to pick them and Virginia the 7.5, have both gotten a little bit of play. And I understand this play. You know, the ACC, and particularly Duke, North Carolina, and Virginia, that's the power three. You know, that's really tough to bet. The line's not going to go the other way, and the odds makers, they already anticipate this. So to me, you're either on Oregon or you're on nobody. I don't see how you can lay the 8.5 based on the fact that it's not good value. You're laying more than what you really should probably be laying. If they played this game 100 times, it would probably fall more times in Oregon's direction than it doesn't in terms of the 8.5. Look, Oregon has made me a lot of money in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I caught them at the right time, and sometimes that happens with the team. In betting, and you're following it day by day in all these sports, you track. Sometimes you miss a run, and you kick yourself on it. You miss a run. If you miss a run, you don't jump on late. You just let it run out, and you go. After 5, 6 in a row, if you haven't got it on at the right time, you don't jump on late. That's what I've learned, and I got Oregon at the right time. And what I learned is you ride it out. So I'm definitely on Oregon tomorrow. I think the value is there. The value is even more accentuated, Mike, because this game's going to be played in a little bit lower scoring. Look at the total, 119.5. That's a 60-60 ball game. That's a 64-56 ball game. They expect this to be low scoring, which it should be, and that means points are even more valuable. So, again, there's value in the total there. There's value in the line. There's only one way I could bet this, and that's Oregon. So I'll be on Oregon tomorrow.
All right.
All right, so we're going to pop
I think I would
over.
stay away from it with the 8 points.
Okay.
And I would bet the over because I think Virginia is going to score 70, 75 points. See, the thing that strikes me about Oregon is this. Have they beat a good team in that streak?
Well, maybe not. I mean, that is the question. You're trying to value the same you would try to value Gonzaga. Visually, Oregon looks very impressive. But
the difference with Gonzaga is this, Bobby. Not to interrupt you, but I am.
I know.
But the difference
okay.
here is this. When I look at the schedule that Oregon played, I don't see hardly any wins against what I consider to be really good teams. I mean, you've got a loss to Iowa. They beat Syracuse, but I don't even think Syracuse belonged in the tournament. They lost to Houston. They lost to Baylor. And they only scored 47 points against Baylor. Washington's probably the best team in the Pac-12. They lost to Washington. Also beat Washington, of course. The Arizona State team I don't think belonged there. The thing that scares me is I wouldn't give the 8 points because I think they're hot. And with Peyton Pritchard, if he gets hot, he's going to cost you. But I don't know. I just don't see how they beat Virginia here. Of course, I didn't see how UCF could have beaten Duke, and they almost did. But I just, right here, the backcourt for Virginia is better. I think the front court's better. And I think the coaching's better with Virginia. I mean, Bennett's proven.
Well,
I think Altman's a good coach. And I wrote an article that'll be out tomorrow previewing both of the games in the South. And the thing that stands out to me with Oregon is this. They seem to be a team that will go through a 5 to 10 minute stretch where they have a hard time scoring. If they do that against a team like Virginia, they're going to be out of the game at whatever point that happens because Virginia is consistent. They don't make mistakes. And the thing is this, Oregon does. And if they get a run like they had for 10 or 12 minutes against UC Irvine, they're going to be down by 20 points before you know it.
Here's my point on that, though, Mike. My rebuttal to that specific thing would be, look, you look for a team ceiling, and Oregon is very scary, and I'll tell you why. Because most of those stats that you brought up, those head-to-head matchups that aren't there, this is a completely different team. They completely found themselves a month ago when they locked down on defense and everybody just stepped up their game and they all it just came together right. They found their identity. We've talked about that. This is a team that was supposed to be run and gun and had two premier freshmen come in, King and Bowl, to go along with a really, really one of the best point guards in the whole tournament, Pritchard. You watch him play tomorrow. And what happened was Bowl got hurt after 4 or 5 games. And then they went through a dull stretch, and then they finally caught it. And that's why I really believe Altman's a great coach. And I think Oregon, that you haven't seen their best game yet in this winning streak. You haven't seen it. And if they pop up and they show it tomorrow, they can bring the upset. That would be my rebuttal to that. And as far as who they played, well, none of those things even matter. That's a different team. It's like handicapping two different teams. It's the team the last month and then the team the first 3 months.
Yeah,
so,
but
yeah,
usually the team that's consistent is usually who wins, though, when you get to this point, I think. Just my opinion.
But
I do think there's more value on the Oregon +8 or +350 than there is Virginia. I'm not going to touch the game just because of that, but
okay.
I think Virginia is the better team. I don't see any way Oregon wins the game, but I actually am cheering for Oregon, even though I'll have to eat some crow then. But let's face it, they have better looking uniforms than Virginia does. All right, let's go.
They do, and my last take on that would be that it's two different teams you have to look at, and I caught this team at the right time, and I'm going to ride it through, and I'll have a little bit on the money line. It's going to be a very tough game, but I'm going to have a pretty significant bet on the 8.5. Not my best play though. We're going to get to that.
All right, next up, we've got Florida State against Gonzaga, and this is a game that is now Gonzaga is favored by 7. Florida State's going to be missing one of their big men who's not going to play. If he was playing and they were completely healthy, I think I would jump all over Florida State in this line. But without that, I think I would stay away from it myself.
Yeah, Mike, I knew that you've kind of been a little bit skeptical of Gonzaga, and you've kind of
I'm not skeptical. I just think Florida State's a bad matchup for them. But Florida State, one of those big, long guys, is going to be out of this game. So I would lean towards Gonzaga now.
Okay. Yeah, well, I tried to look at the points, and I couldn't land on Florida State. I definitely don't want to give the points in a spot like this. But I tried to take the points, and I agree with you. To me, this is a very risky play for the fans. When you look at +7.5 with Florida State and +8.5 with Oregon, to me, it's a no-brainer. You would take Oregon if you're going to take one of those dogs. Florida State, missing that big man against Gonzaga is going to really hurt them. Gonzaga has depth, and Gonzaga, they could run past them. This could be one of those games where you're going, God, why didn't I take Gonzaga and just give the 7.5 because they're up by 19 like late in the second half. That could happen. But I respect Florida State enough, and I'm just going to stay away from the game.
All right, so I guess a game I've already bet is one that you feel the same way I do about maybe Texas Tech at Michigan, or are we on opposite sides here? Michigan is favored by 2.
Well, I think we're on opposite sides, Mike, because I like Michigan in the game. Michigan, it's a couple different styles here, but the reason I like Michigan is because their size, with that big kid underneath, the way he's kind of controlling the paint area, he's making passes out of the paint, he's blocking shots, he's kind of disrupting things. I don't think Texas Tech is going to be able to drive that well against Michigan. Michigan, their defense, let's face it, these are two of the top 2 or 3 or 4 defensive teams in the country. So, again, we're looking at a very low-scoring game. The total's 126, and we're looking at dribble drive and free throws, and those type of points might be the key. And I like Michigan's ability to do that a little bit better than Texas's Tech. And, I'm going to go with Michigan. They picked up that extra scoring output from Matthews. They're getting 5-6 guys in the scoring column. They won a big game on Sunday without the left-handed shooter, their freshman star player. He didn't really deliver much of a game, didn't matter. If he comes through and plays well tomorrow, I think this thing's definitely over for Michigan's favor. And I like the coaching. I like Beard. I got nothing against him. He's a Knight disciple. He's done an outstanding job with Texas Tech, but Michigan's been there and done that. and I love their identity. Another team that's come together at the right time, and I caught them at the right time. And the only loss they had in this stretch was Michigan State. And when you saw those kids, the way they reacted to that loss, they were pissed off. This team has not just dejected at a loss, pissed off at themselves they didn't get it done. And I think they're going to the Final Four, Mike. I do. And they're favored by 2 points, and I'm going to lay it. This will be a top play for me tomorrow.
All righty. We got baseball to talk about now, too, Bobby.
Oh, man, I'm excited about this, Mike. And I want to talk a little bit about, I won't drone on because we have every day to talk about these things. But I do want to give a little bit of a look, see at how I approach baseball. Baseball is money line wagering. And in the money line wagering, what I do is I'll look for 2 or 3 of the top dogs on the card, and I will play those. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, okay, here's the game tomorrow. You got the Tigers are plus $1.25, all right? And they're going to play the Blue Jays tomorrow. They're on the road. And the pitching matchup is Zimmerman. I got to log back in here. I'm just going by my head. Zimmerman is going up against Stroman, and that game's in Toronto. And I really like. So what I'm saying is, when I take Toronto plus $1.25, is I'm saying that line, the value of that line, is much more of like a Detroit, a small favorite, in the way I look at the game and the way I handicap the game. And so I take the value. And so when I'm always on the underdogs in the money line wagering, I don't have to hit as high a percentage to make money. I could actually go 2-2 and make money if they're 4 dogs. And, I typically will hit 62 to 65% of my top plays in baseball, and you will never lay money. You'll never lay money. And I learned a long time ago from a bookmaker that I really trusted, the most susceptible the joints are during baseball season is a dog-to-dog parlay. Okay, that's the number one bet value-wise that you could ever make in any of these things would be a dog-to-dog parlay. So what I've done is I've accentuated that, and I've handicapped for the 2 to 3 to 4 best dogs on the card. And it's amazing how many times they come through. I have another stat for you. I'm talking about in baseball, just how they come through, and especially with my knowledge of the game. I look at everything, Mike, and from, in areas that the novice, probably wouldn't even see. But I wanted to, and I'm getting a problem with my phone here. I want to show you something here. I'm trying to pull it up. There's a statistics I want to read for you about underdogs in these sports coming through. Okay. The underdog win percentage in Major League Baseball is 42.3. Okay? The underdog will win 42.3% of the games. For example, or in comparison, in the NFL, the underdog will win 33% of the time. And in NCAA basketball, the underdog will win 25% of the time. So it stands to reason that just blindly picking games last year, and if you just pick the underdog, you'd have won 42% of the time. I think if you bet every game underdog, you'd probably make a little bit of money or just lose a little bit of money. Because sometimes you're getting plus 205, plus 180, plus 215, plus 140. 42% of those gets you about even. You're never going to lose. You're never going to lay 290 to make 150 or something. You're always getting value. So in my expertise, I can pick 60% of the dogs, not 42. So you can see how much money I'm making in baseball. And then when I'm getting in a hot streak and I'm parlaying 2 and 3 teams and hitting the underdogs, these $100 parlays are paying $512, paying $486. That's how I've made my money. And then what I do is, on a certain day that maybe the underdogs lose 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4, I always give myself some coverage to cover that. Is I'll take a 3-team parlay and I'll take the top 3 favorites. Now these are teams, favorites win 58% of the time. So these are games where I can't find the underdog. I don't think the underdog has at least a 40% chance to win, probably more like a 20%. So I'll take 3 best favorites and I'll hook them together. And often this 3-team parlay will cover, some of your action that you may have lost in the underdog. betting your straight bets and those kind of things. So tomorrow, with that in mind, hopefully you're following, I've got a 3-team parlay tomorrow. These are all favorites. It's the Red Sox, the A's, and the Rockies. And for example, those 3 teams hooked together for $100 wins $386.
So are you betting them with the line, or are you just betting them straight up to win, correct?
No line. Yeah, no minus 1.5 runs or nothing like that. Always just straight up to win. Money line wagering. Straight up. So I will not bet these straight bets, though. This will be just a 3-team parlay. So the Red Sox, A's, and Rockies tomorrow, they're all favorites. Those 3 make one bet. It pays about 4-1. Okay? Now, where I'm going to make my straight bets is I'm betting my top play tomorrow is the White Sox. Okay? They're even money. So you bet 100 to win 100. Get back 2, right? That's even money. That's my top play tomorrow. And I have another top play. That's the Tigers at plus 125. I already said that. So 100 will get you 125, 2 get you 250, on and on, right? I will have a parlay, White Sox Tigers. And then I have a third game tomorrow. Of course, it's an underdog. It's a straight bet. The Mets at plus 115 with DeGrom over the Nationals. So that's my 3 plays tomorrow. The White Sox, Mets, and Tigers. Those are the 3 best underdogs on the card tomorrow, on the baseball card. And then I've got a 3-team parlay, which will be all favorites, just hooked together in one bet, Red Sox, A's, and Rockies. That would, at 4-1, that would cover in case we kind of lose 2 out of 3 tomorrow of the straight bets. And I can't tell you how many times, Mike, I'll hit the whole thing. We'll hit the parlay, we'll hit all 3 dogs or 2 of the 3 dogs, and really have a big day. And that's where I made my name, and it's kind of where I made my bankroll, to be honest. And so that's my number 1 return on investment is baseball. So we're real excited, and that's what baseball looks like. And thanks for listening, because I have to kind of explain how I approach things.
So the White Sox, Mets, and
Tigers
are your 3 underdogs to bet separately and straight, correct?
Separately bet each separately. Make a straight bet on each game separately, and then you can, however you want to bet some parlays. You want to throw in a couple parlays with those 3 teams. You bet a 3-team, or you can bet. I typically bet 2-teamers in baseball when the
See,
dogs.
on mine, the White Sox are actually favored tomorrow.
No, the White Sox are not favored tomorrow.
Yes, they are. I'm looking right at it on my bookie. My bookie is the complete opposite of that. They've got the White Sox as minus 105.
Yes. Yeah, I put the wrong line down there, Mike. Yeah, you're right. The White Sox are even money tomorrow against the Royals. I had the wrong. The team that's going to Toronto's plus 125. That's Detroit. So Detroit is plus 125. What did I say? Did I say that wrong?
Yeah. So you got Detroit at plus 120, right?
Yeah, 120, 125. Yeah, I've got it written down right on my report here. The Tigers plus 125 is what I got on my site. Okay, over the Blue Jays. The White Sox are plus 100, which that's even money. That's even over the Royals, and the Mets are plus 115. So that would be my 3 top straight bets tomorrow. And I'll have a 2-team parlay, the White Sox and the Tigers, and I might mess around the Mets with Mets with the White Sox or something. And then I got my 1 3-team parlay, the Red Sox, A's, and Rockies. Those are all favorites. The Red Sox go with Sale tomorrow, minus 200. But see, I would never bet that straight up. I would never lay 400 to make 200, 1,000 to make 5.
Yeah,
it's not worth it. Favorites only win 58% of the time, and I'm looking to bet the dogs. See, that's my style. I'm gonna find the top underdogs on the card, and that's what I'm looking at. So you'll never see me lose.
So kind of similar to your ATP tennis theory, correct?
It's very similar, and that's where I came up with that. As I started really handicapping the tennis, I used the baseball model. Tennis, all of a sudden, boom, becomes my second ROI, return on investment. I just don't bet the volume because I'll be honest with you. I bet $200 a tennis match. That's it.
Yeah.
And in baseball, I might bet $4,000 on a game.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. Not every one of my bets. I'm not high roller, but I do pretty well. But I mean, tomorrow, I might have 1,000 on the White Sox and 1,000 on the Tigers and a $300 parlay, something like that. Something like that. 3-team parlay at 4-1 odds, I might bet 500 on it. that gets me back $2,000. And that covers it in case the straight action goes down on a certain day. But I'm going to pick 60% underdogs. And so bottom line is you're going to make money if you're betting these baseball underdogs.
All right, Bobby. You got any NBA for tomorrow, or are we steering clear to the playoffs?
I got one game. I am sort of starting to steer clear, and let me check the score. I'm so upset, Mike. Oh, man, this is brutal. The Thunder beat the Pacers, Mike, 107-99. So we lose by 8. We're getting 6.5, and Wesley Matthews missed a three-pointer with 18 seconds left that would have at least allowed them to maybe cover. The final 2 points were scored by Westbrook at the free throw line with 22 seconds left. They fouled him intentionally, I'm sure. So we lose the game, Mike, again tonight. That's a top play on the Pacers. They're up by 9.5 and get beat 31-15 in the third quarter. And it was 21-4 at one time. It's just, this is 3 straight days of, really blowing halftime leads. So it's very frustrating. So the fans can hear me live. I just looked at that score with you, and it's very frustrating. It hurts, and I probably have more money on that game than most of the people listening. But, it's as I've talked about it, you can't allow that to affect your decision-making, affect your emotions. You have to look at it as, what, you're going to win. You're going to try to win 65%, 62%. Sometimes you hit higher, but, it's frustrating for sure. And that's why I always say, having a bankroll is important. If you come in with $500 and you're trying to I'm trying to make $2,000 in 2 days, you might, but that's not the way you do this for a living. You come in with a bankroll that's much larger than that, and you bet a percentage of it. And the higher your bankroll goes, the higher your percentage can go up. So that's how you long-term can do this. You can withstand cold streaks, and you can not, punch a hole through the walls when you get beat by 1.5 blowing the lead. So anyhow, it's frustrating. But so NBA tomorrow, we have one play that I'm looking at right now, and that's the Clippers. The Clippers are going to Milwaukee, and they're getting 8.5 points. And the Bucks have done a great job of sending the right message to the teams they need to send them to, and backing off a little bit on the games that aren't as demanding, because their mind is looking towards the playoffs and getting Giannis extra rest and things. And Clippers are playing really good basketball. Some of the best basketball that's being played in the NBA right now is by the Clippers, and I think tomorrow they can go in there and play free and cover that 8.5.
Is that a top play, or is that just a play?
That'll be the NBA top play tomorrow.
NBA top play tomorrow. The LA Clippers. I got them here at plus 8.5. Same thing you got. You there, Bobby?
That's what we got, Mike. Right. So, yeah, I'm there. That's what I got too. Can you hear me?
Yep. All righty. Do you want to do it on this day or not?
I sure do. And I want to just say one last thing. Tomorrow there's an ATP match I really like, and it's a quarterfinal match with Tiafoe going up against Shapovalov. These are two next-gen guys, along with, Auger Aliassime, who I've talked about, and these kind of things. But I really like the line on this matchup tomorrow. He's and Auger Aliassime, who I have a big bet on tonight. He won the first set. I'm looking at it right now. He's up 2-0 in the second set. So these next-gen guys are doing really well. Auger Aliassime is plus 140, so I'll need that to make up for some of my Indiana if that can come through. But Tiafoe tomorrow is plus 180 over Shapovalov, and that's two next-gen guys battling. And I really like Tiafoe tomorrow at that price a lot. So that'll be the ATP tomorrow. I don't have a start time on that yet. It'll come out
11 a.m. is what it says on here.
You got 11 a.m.? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, check that out, because I don't think it's going to be 11 a.m. I think it's going to be more like about 3 p.m. on the East. So we'll see. Just check that for the listeners, because those times often change.
It says 11 right now, because it's got Kevin Anderson against Roger Federer at 9 a.m. I don't know.
But see, that won't be. The first match today was at noon Pacific, so 3 o'clock Eastern. So, all right, Mike. I wanted to mention that, and yeah, I do have an on this day.
Well, hold on. We got to run to MyBookie commercial before we go to on this day, Bobby.
All right.
All right, guys. We will be back in 1 minute and 12 seconds to talk a little 1977.
Hi, I'm Mike Goodpasser from the Grueling Truth Sports Network, and I'm here with just one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money. The Grueling Truth has recently partnered with MyBookie.ag, an industry-leading sportsbook website, who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on, and that's why the Grueling Truth urges you to check out MyBookie.ag. In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on MyBookie.ag daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now and MyBookie will give you up to a free $1,000 cash bonus on your first deposit. Just enter promo code TGT50, that's TGT50, to take advantage of this offer. You can also go to thegruelingtruth.net, click the banner at the top of the page for MyBookie.ag, and also get the same benefit and the same $1,000 free cash bonus on your first deposit. So visit MyBookie.ag, courtesy of the Grueling Truth, and enjoy winning today. MyBookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
All right, guys, we're back on the Sheridan Report. I'm Mike Goodpasser with Bobby Sheridan. Make sure you go to thegruelingtruth.net, click on the MyBookie.ag banner to get up to a $1,000 cash bonus on your first deposit. All right, Bobby, what do we got for on this day?
On this day tomorrow, or when I say tomorrow, it's, I don't know when, we're live now, so it is tomorrow. Podcast, this is Thursdays on this day, March 28th, right?
Yeah.
March 28th, 1977, okay? This is the 39th NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, and we just talked about the 78 edition. Well, the 77, Marquette and Al McGuire, right, beat North Carolina 67-59. This was the year after Bobby Knight's perfect season, and this is 77. And I'd love to hear you talk about this, Mike.
Well, 1977, of course, Al McGuire, most notably his final game at Marquette, wins the championship. They show him crying on the sideline as the time's running out. Was a great tournament. It was the last tournament that didn't seed people or seed teams. And when you look at the East region, it was stacked. You had Kentucky, Notre Dame, North Carolina. Notre Dame actually gave North Carolina a scare, lost to them by 2 points in the regional semifinals. Kentucky beat VMI, who still to this day is one of the best basketball programs around, 93-78 or something. And Kentucky comes out, they lose to North Carolina 79-72. The interesting thing about that game, though, was Jack Givens, who I think scored like 25 or 30 points, and that's a precursor to what he would do to next year when Kentucky won it all. So North Carolina, they go to the finals. The West region was, I think, maybe the most exciting region of all this, because the West region had my favorite, which is Cinderella, and that's Idaho State. We talked about Cal State Fullerton in 1978. Yeah. But 1977, I think most of the excitement surrounding that Western Regional was what everybody thought would be a top 5 matchup between UCLA and ULV. Tarkanian had lost to UCLA like 3 times previously when he was at Long Beach State in the tournament. And in 1971, I don't think people realize this, but in the West Regional, 1971, in the middle of all those UCLA championships, Long Beach State lost by 2 points and led by 11 in the second half. And they fell apart at the end, and UCLA beats them 57-55. And I think most people thought this was Tark's best chance to beat his nemesis. But he never got the chance. Idaho State beat Long Beach State, Jerry Tarkanian's former team, by like 10 or 11 points in the first round. And that takes them to the regional semifinals, where UCLA had beaten a really good Louisville team by, I think, double digits. And the regional semifinals, though, Idaho State, out of the Big Sky Conference, unranked, just absolutely stuns UCLA and beats them 76-75 to go on to the Elite Eight, while UNLV took care of business. And, I mean, they beat San Francisco 121-95. I think that was still the Bill Cartwright team. They played Utah in the regional semifinals and won a fairly close game, if I remember correctly. And then in that regional final, they beat Idaho State 107-90. Idaho State actually led that game by a point at the start of the second half. So Idaho State was your Cinderella for this tournament, or one of the two Cinderellas, because we're about to get to the other one. And you go to the Mideast region, which was played at Rep Arena. The interesting thing here was you had Dick Vitale. Dick Vitale was the coach for the Detroit Titans. They were in the same bracket as Michigan. On the bottom bracket was Charlotte and Syracuse. Syracuse beat Tennessee in a great first-round game, 93-88. Charlotte beat Central Michigan, but then Charlotte upset Syracuse, and they beat them bad. I think it was by like 20 or 30 points. Charlotte had Cornbread Maxwell, who would go on to start for the Celtics. He was the MVP of the 1981 NBA Finals, played an outstanding game in Game 7 of the 84 Finals to help lead the Celtics over the Lakers. You had Michigan, who beats Holy Cross, which I think was a fairly close game. It was like 8, 9, 10 points, somewhere around there. Detroit beat Middle Tennessee State, and that led to Detroit playing Michigan in the semifinals. And this was a really good Michigan team. Most people thought this was the team that was going to come out of the bracket. Vitale kept the game close the whole time. I think they had Terry Tyler and John Long. John Long went on to play for the Pistons. He played for the Pacers. I think John Long played for almost every team in the NBA and Europe and Asia by the time he was done. Man never saw a shot he didn't like or wouldn't take. But they ended up losing by a few points to Michigan. And then Michigan plays UNC Charlotte. UNC Charlotte was a team that I think most people thought was going to get beat. But they came out. They played great. Cornbread Maxwell was great. 175-68. The interesting thing about that Charlotte team, and I think we've talked about this on a previous show, probably Survive and Advance, was the NIT was a bigger deal back then because up to 1977, right now in 77 where we're at, there was only 32 teams in the tournament. So you were basically starting off in the second round and then playing a regional semifinal, a regional final, and then the Final Four. Charlotte the year before that had upset Kentucky at Madison Square Garden and won the NIT. And that's when people, I think, started to really take them seriously because back then, like Indiana in 1979, a couple of years later, they win it all. Teams that had success in the NIT back then, especially if they were younger teams, tended to carry that on into a deep run in March Madness the next year. So Charlotte goes to the Final Four, and they're going to be matched up against Marquette. And on the other side, you had UNLV was going, and they were going to play Marquette. I think I just said that wrong, didn't I? But North Carolina was going to play UNLV. Charlotte would play Marquette. Marquette beat Cincinnati, who at the time I think had Pat Cummings, who was a really good player, had a really good NBA career. Marquette beats them. They win by 1 point over Kansas State. They played Wake Forest in the Elite Eight, and they won that game pretty comfortably. And then you get one of the best Final Fours I think we've ever seen, at least the Saturday version of it. UNC Charlotte loses 51-49 against Marquette, came down to the final buzzer. The game is still controversial. Hell, the North Carolina UNLV game was still controversial. North Carolina 84-83 over UNLV, and that was, I think, the first game of the day. I'm not 100% sure. And then Charlotte, Marquette. Marquette wins by 2, so the two games are decided by a total of 3 points. And both games had a lot of controversy at the end of it, and that led us to Marquette playing against North Carolina in the NCAA final. And nobody knew that this was going to be McGuire's final game, I don't think. He announced it to the team, if I remember right before the game was played. This was the team that had Butch Lee, Jerome Whitehead, and I know Butch Lee was an integral part of the 1976 Puerto Rican Olympic team that actually almost upset the United States in the Olympics. I think that, I can't remember if it was an early round game or the semifinal, and I think they actually lost a fairly close game in the championship or the gold medal game to them also. But the final, of course, Dean Smith. And Dean Smith was known for his slow-down four-corner offense whenever he got the lead. And he did it in this game with a little lead, and it really backfired him on it because Marquette came after him. Marquette pulled away, if I remember right, in the last 5 minutes of the first half. I think they were up by 12 points at halftime. And this was a this was a hell of a North Carolina team. You had Phil Ford, who I think every year he was there was an All-American. Walter Davis, who was one of my favorite players to watch when I was a kid growing up, especially with the Phoenix Suns. They called him the Greyhound. I remember
Yeah.
I remember the '84 Western Conference Finals because they pushed the Lakers to 6 games and actually lost Game 6 at home, or they would have forced a Game 7. And Walter Davis in Games 4 and 5 of that series, really gave the Suns a chance to win because he led them single-handedly to win Game 4, and they actually went into the Forum and won Game 5. And they had a chance to force a Game 7 because they were down 3-1. I think or 2-0, something like that. But they won Games 4 and 5, had a chance to force a Game 7, couldn't get it done. Mike O'Koren was the big guy with John Kuster. O'Koren was a big dude underneath, and really in this game, I think Davis scored like 20. O'Koren was in double digits. Nobody else was, though. In Marquette, you had Butch Lee, Bo Ellis, Jerome Whitehead, and 2 other guys that I don't remember. But I remember those other 3 really well. And
Yeah.
I think they had a little white dude named Boylan or something that shot like 5 for 6 or 5 for 7 in the game that helped. But the thing that was impressive about Marquette that I do remember is this. I think they shot like 25, close to 30 free throws in that game and only missed 2. And they were just a great team. And I got to throw in the Indiana connection because I'm pretty sure Dave Colescott, who won a state championship, I think back-to-back state championships in 75 to 76 at Marion High School under Bill Green, also played on that team, but I think he just kind of sat on the bench and watched.
You've mentioned about McGuire maybe telling them before the game. I had not heard that. But it may make sense because now I did hear this. Tell me if I heard this right or if I'm recollecting right. John Wood, 1975 at halftime, told his kids that that'd be the last half that he'd be coaching at UCLA. Is that correct, Mike?
I have no clue. That was before my
You
time.
had
The
heard-
first NCAA final I remember watching was 76. I read about a lot of them, but John Wooden just never really impressed me that much once I read about Sam Gilbert. So I never really worried about him too much. And I think the amazing thing with Al McGuire is the way he built that program because, who the hell was Marquette before Al McGuire got there? And McGuire was... He was a hell of a coach. And he retired at a young age, and I loved watching him. For the next 20 or 30 years, you saw him do the NCAA tournament. And the thing about Al McGuire, and this was brought up to me by Steve Risley when I talked to him tonight, because he was on Game Day IQ with Chris Cook and Alan Buck, and they were talking about the NCAA tournament, the NIT, and all that, since Indiana was in it. But Marquette, Al McGuire in 1970 was unhappy with his team's placement in the NCAA tournament and actually turned down a bid to the NCAA tournament and elected to play in the NIT instead.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy.
Now here's something interesting. All right, because the Final Four of the NIT was this. The Final Four of the NIT was Marquette, who beat St. John's. You know who the other 2 teams were in that Final Four of the NIT?
Who?
LSU and the Army Black Knights.
Uh-oh.
The general.
Bob
And the thing is this. Bob Knight took and beat University of Cincinnati in the first round. They beat Manhattan in the second round. And then they lost by 1 point to St. John's in the NIT semifinal. And there you go. Bobby Knight's last game at Army, I think, was there because in 1971 he took over Indiana. So I'm sure that the run they had in that tournament was probably the impetus for Coach Knight to get that job.
Yeah, the momentum for sure. And what I heard about that with Knight was he went in and he said, I'll speak for as long as you want me to speak here, about my program. And, if how did the story go? And I'll tell you exactly what you're getting. And if you are still interested in me, I'll talk as long as you want to talk. And if you're not, all I need is an hour of your time, or something. There was some story that went along with that. I've heard Knight explain it, and boy, Indiana, if that wasn't the greatest hire they ever made, and for basketball, it was complete fit. And there's another thing drawing Knight to Al McGuire. It's interesting you bring up McGuire, because my mind was drifting to an interview that McGuire did with Knight. I believe it was just before 87 or just after the 87 championship, and it was talking about Bobby Knight and how much longer he may stay in coaching. And he had said, it might have been before he signed his new contract, but he said that he didn't have to coach forever, and whatever he wound up going into didn't have to be competitive like everybody thought. He just may go off and fish and never be heard from again. And it was a neat interview that you can still see on YouTube if you haven't seen it. It's Al McGuire interviewing Bobby Knight, and it was really good. I remember that.
All right, and how about this? Do you know who the star of the Marquette team was in 1970?
I have no idea.
Dean Meminger. You remember that name, don't you?
I don't.
Oh, yeah. He played for the Knicks, and he was on the bench of the team that went to the finals in 72, 73. And I think he went to the Atlanta Hawks after that, finished back up with the Knicks. But Dean Meminger was the guy who basically Al McGuire said really put the program at Marquette over the top, because they started to really pick up around 65, 66 when he got there. And, And the other thing was this. The NCAA was so pissed off by Marquette that it instituted a rule that forced an NCAA Division I team to accept an NCAA bid over an NIT bid no matter what.
Oh, man.
And that led to a subsequent antitrust case brought by the NIT against the NCAA over the issue that was later settled out of court.
That's amazing. Speaking of the NIT, North Carolina State, with 4 minutes left, is beating Lipscomb by 4. It means Lipscomb's playing well on the road. And
Lipscomb should have been in the tournament.
Yeah, I agree. And then in that other tournament, CBI, DePaul's beating Coastal Carolina, but Carolina covered. And the dogs I'm taking in these smaller tournaments aren't playing, Mike. Colorado's getting beat by 19, and we're going to have a tough one again today. And, hey, baseball's coming tomorrow, and we're going to get it back. And those are going to be great games we're going to watch in the Sweet 16. And one last thing I just remembered, I think it was Dick Enberg came on with McGuire after that interview, and they said, don't let Knight fool you. I've heard from people, and he used to fish with Ted Williams and all those guys. Yeah. I've heard from people that he even fishes hard. That Bobby Knight even fishes hard.
Well, how about this? This is the other interesting thing I was going to throw in was Marquette beat LSU in the semifinals of the NIT in 1970. Who was the star for LSU? This should be a home run.
Well, I may sound stupid, but was that Maravich?
Yeah, Pete Maravich.
Yeah, Pete Maravich, yeah. I knew that one.
Hey, and the interesting thing about Dean Meminger, since nobody ever talks about Dean Meminger, so I will. Dean Meminger at Marquette never lost during his varsity career a home game.
Wow, that's amazing. What conference was that back in those days, Mike?
Marquette was an independent. Yeah, Marquette was an independent. I remember when I was growing up, like in the 70s, I know Marquette was an independent. Dayton with Don Donaher, I think in the 70s became an independent. Notre Dame, of course, has always been independent. So I think there was a lot more independent schools back then than there are now. But there wasn't the money tied into being in a conference as there is now.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But, all right, Bobby.
All right,
and I can tell you this. If anybody wants to meet Bobby Sheridan from the Sheridan Report, he will be at Anaheim tomorrow at the regionals. Just go ahead and, tweet him at Sheridan Report, and Bobby will come shake your hand and sign an autograph.
No doubt about it. Oh, man, you're not going to want my autograph after these 3 days. I'll tell you that. But, hey, our record stands for itself, Mike, and I'm not one of those guys. I don't gloat and I don't pout. I just next day, and that's how I've been able to do this and sustain for a long time. And I'm excited about those games tomorrow. The two late games are the one I'm most excited about, the one you're going to be watching, the Oregon game and then my Michigan game. And those are the ones I'm really excited for. And I will send a couple tweets out tomorrow live from the Anaheim Arena. They call it the Honda Center. And it's right, for those that don't know, it's right across the freeway from Anaheim Stadium, from where the Angels play. So that is, really neat area down there. The 57 freeway dissects those two ballparks, those two stadiums, and I'm looking forward to it. It's only about a 30-minute drive for me, and I'm excited for it.
Yep, me too. I'm going to Louisville, which is about an hour and 40 minutes for me, so I'll get home about 2 in the morning tomorrow, but I'll just give you a call on the way home. All right, guys, make sure you follow Bobby Sheridan at Sheridan Report or thesheridanreport.com. $10 a day for the Sheridan Report, $50 for the entire month. Parlay that with MyBookie.ag, where you'll click on thegruelingtruth.net, click on the banner at the top of the page for MyBookie.ag, and get up to a 50% bonus up to $1,000. So make sure you check that out, guys. Thanks for listening to the show today. Survive in Advance will be in repeat mode tomorrow, I believe, because me and Bobby will be busy. Indiana Basketball Weekly will actually be, I think, 6 o'clock Friday night. Colin had a few things come up, so we wanted to make sure we got on there. So if you want to hear us bitch and whine about IU losing in the NIT, you can hear that Friday night. And Friday at noon, Bobby Sheridan will be back with us with Graham McGowan to preview the Major League Baseball season. It'll only be one game in. Can't tell anything off one game. So we will have a Major League Baseball preview on Friday. All right, guys, remember, you can hear all of our shows pretty much anywhere, but mainly on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for Bobby Sheridan, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.